So Hialeah is called the city of progress. I would argue the fact that for a city, for an organization, even a country to have progress, there has to be someone with a vision that is relentless and being an optimist about the future. What would you say a visionary is?
Good question, right? Who could get themselves in a mindset that could project what the city's going to look like 25 years from now? And then how do you start investing and building the foundation today that could help fulfill that vision that you may not even live to see? So for me, that's what we bring to the table, the conversation we bring to the table. If you call it visionary, we'll own it. But visionary usually is only when things come out successful, right? So I'm kind of invested to make sure that the things we do here today, future generations are going to be able to appreciate what we've done.
How do you, on that thought process, how do you go about that, understanding that the decisions that you're making today will inevitably outlive you, and you're not just looking at what's good for Hialeah today, what's good for the city today, what's good for the people today? Like, how do you go about that decision making of making decisions that are beneficial that will outlive you inevitably and outlive both of us?
Generations to come.
Yeah. They have to, they have to be linked. Okay. I live in a business that I get measured every 4 years on the job performance. So clearly, I need to be able, and the team that I've built needs to be able to deliver on a literally month-to-month basis, right? But within that, we need to look long-term. We need to educate, convince, dialogue with our residents of why we're making the investments that we're making. So I'll give you an example. When I first came to the city of Hialeah, I felt that our park programs were being neglected. I felt that the experience that was being created of our parks program was not what perhaps I grew up knowing as far as our parks are concerned. We have no baseball league in the city of Hialeah. Let that sink in for a second. For residents of the city of Hialeah that have produced Major League Baseball players, from Charlie Huff to Bucky Dent to Gio Gonzalez and others, right, that have made it to the major leagues, we didn't have that here. But why didn't we have that here? Because things had changed. Travel leagues have taken over. Corey League didn't exist. HAA didn't exist anymore. So now I inherit that, and I think to myself, and I challenge my park folks, I guess, okay, what is it that we could do to instantly start regenerating or infusing activities in our park programs today, but what is it going to look like 25 years from now so that we could start building the relationships that we need to build so that tomorrow somebody will say, wow, these guys back in 2024 had the vision of creating something that we're now reaping the benefits of. So what does that look like? That looks like collaborations with the Florida Marlins. That looks like collaborations with parents to energize them to go ahead and rebuild baseball leagues so that the kid in Hialeah who cannot afford the $200 to $300 a month in a travel baseball construct could now have that baseball experience and be able to get off the couch and not be on a computer all day long. So to me, we could use that, but we could attribute that to streets. We could attribute that to water and sewer projects. We could attribute that to construction in our city. You know, how do we fulfill the needs immediately? But think in terms of you need to build a foundation so this city could grow vertically, this city could grow and expand itself.
I would argue, I don't know, maybe the viewers want to chime in on this one, but I would argue another milestone that indicates the city being a city of progress is the new street, the Palm Avenue changing to President Donald J. Trump Avenue. Why do you think that was important?
What a move, by the way. Congratulations on that. That was fantastic.
I won't take full credit for it. That was kind of like baked in the mind of my son, my oldest, who said, you know, I think this would be a good idea. And as we kind of molded over, I think there was a real reason behind it, okay? I've seen in my lifetime now, the first election that I participated in was the Ronald Reagan 1980 election, but I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon, as an awareness. Probably the Richard Nixon election was the first one I started becoming aware politically. In all that time, the one refreshing thing I could tell you is that along comes a Donald Trump and not only promises or commits to something, but actually does it. Two examples of that. He came to the Cuban community maybe in 2016, early 2016, and made a promise to the veterans of the brigade, the Bay of Pigs veterans, that he was going to change the policy with Cuba vis-a-vis to what Obama had done just 2-3 years before, which to many in the Cuban community was probably the biggest backstab since perhaps the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And he came through on that. He got elected, and he never forgot. In fact, a little side note, he invited my dad to the White House. My dad's been in the Oval Office with a group of other brigade members and took him a battle flag of the brigade, and they presented it to him, which was a great honor for my dad. And the second thing that I think the president came through on is that he made a commitment to move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The State Department personnel, the bureaucracy within the State Department told me you can't do that because there'll be hell to pay. Every Arab country will move against Israel in the United States. He did it and nothing happened. He came through on promises, on concrete promises, not to mention, short of a pandemic, what we were living as far as economic prosperity and upward mobility and opportunities. That's a president who delivers. This is a community that voted 76% for Donald Trump, flat out. In the previous election in 2020, probably voted another 70% for him. This is a community that understood what he was committed to. So it wasn't a risk, to be honest with you. It was thinking about it, saying, this is what my community wants. And for the one or two people that will go on a liberal magazine or news outlet and criticize it, I've got tenfold of people that have come up to him and said, thank you for doing it. It was important to do this because we felt that there was a stolen election in 2020 and there was a vindication in 24, and now here we are.
I love it. Back to your point of being a visionary, like being able to name that street, which is basically the major avenue that splits Hialeah. For that is absolutely crucial. I absolutely love that. Question. Any plans for him to come down and do any inauguration of signs?
That's a hope, right? I mean, we didn't get all dressed up for nothing. So I had a chance to talk to the president a couple of days before the election in Doral, and we spoke, and I said, look, I'm waiting for you to do an unveiling, and he said, look, let's get past the election, and I want to come down. So I'm thinking there'll be a moment when whether before the swearing in or after, that he's going to come down to Doral. Obviously, he owns property at Doral Trump, and it's not a long stretch from Doral to Hialeah, and then maybe we could do something. Now, recently, we went to the county commission and got permission to do the last piece that was crucial. So the city of Hialeah, so that people understand, we designate Palm Avenue. Now, old timers could keep calling it Palm Avenue. My parents used to call Children's Hospital Variety Children's Hospital. That's old school for a lot of folks that might not remember. And then it became Miami Children's and now Nicholas Children. So old school folks are going to call it Palm Avenue. Not a problem. I don't want to take anything away from anybody. But the fact that we did it, and then the county now allows us to put it in the intersections, will be no mistake to anybody. When you approach the dividing point between east and west in our city, it's going to be called President Donald J. Trump Avenue. Now, for an old school person, it may still be Palm Avenue, and we're cool with that, not a problem. Yeah. But as generations move forward, people are going to know what the avenue should be called.
It's President Donald J. Trump Avenue.
It has a ring to it. I think so. It has a ring to it.
I think he likes it. So,
to play devil's advocate just a little bit, for those 24% of the people that are saying, no, but how could you do that? He's a convicted felon. I mean, this guy's done this. He said this about the Haitians over here. I mean, you in yourself standing firm on the American conservative values in itself and rejecting the left's ideologies of appealing to all. Do you think that in itself is what's allowing Hialeah to get one of the safest cities in Florida, allowing to have all this prosperity, all this money that's coming? Do you think that's a large reason for that?
A lot to unpack what you just said. Okay, a lot of different ways we could go on this thing. Let me address for a second the nature of Donald Trump and how he approaches things. He's not a politician. He makes no excuses for not being a politician. I'm a politician. I try to think before I speak, and I try to make sure that what I say will satisfy you, will make some of the listeners, all the listeners, happy. That's what politicians do. What those that are not politicians, in Spanish, it's al pan pan y al vino vino, right? You don't mess with flowery language, and you just call it as you see it. What Donald Trump did in 2016, identifying an illegal migration that was coming into this country, that was going to and has potentially the ability to alter the future of our country, is undeniable. Mexican Americans that have been here 30 or 40 years were concerned about people that were coming in. Same with Cubans, same with Haitians, same with El Salvadorians, Colombians. They were concerned with the illegal migration that was coming in. The left has done an adequate job of trying to paint anybody that defends the president's policy as anti-immigrant. We reject that completely in Hialeah. Okay, we're an immigrant city.
100%.
But we support legal immigration.
Correct.
In fact, I would counter and say that legal immigration is the golden key to the American dream. If you come here legally, all the benefits, la abundancia de este país, are open to you if you come legally. If you come illegally, you've immediately put yourself behind the 8 ball from day one because you need to live in the shadows. Pay me in cash, pay me with a fake social security number. You're now entering into an illegal enterprise, whether you like it or not, while you're trying to seek
And you don't
ability.
get to carry out that American dream.
Very difficult. There may be instances of where it happens, but you're very, very challenged.
Few and far in between.
Because this country, if it does anything, it opens the door to those that come seeking fame and fortune. This has been the DNA of this country forever, right? Italians, Polacks that came, Irish that came, Cubans that came. Legally, all the doors open for you. So if you take that at its core, every single person that came here the right way, through legal means, looks at that person who came illegally, maybe with a sympathetic eye, but also at the same time kind of chastising them a little bit. Because what they're doing is, while you're jumping the line, going into your property without your permission, there's somebody waiting in line and doing it the right way that now all of a sudden gets stopped. That's important to understand, okay? We're a nation of laws, but they can't just be applicable to who wants to, who doesn't want to. But you allude to something that is a source of pride for us in this city of Hialeah. You know, we now get ranked, not by our doing, not by our request, not by something that we paid for. An independent group does a study and says you are the safest city south of Lake Okeechobee and the second safest city in the state of Florida. 53rd in the entire nation, and I don't know how many cities there may be. 9,000 cities nationwide, maybe more, maybe less, not 100% sure. We're ranked 53rd. Source of pride for our police department, no doubt. Great job by our police chief, Jorge Fuente, and the buy-in from his department, how to serve our community. You know, they walk a beat. They meet the owners of businesses. They go out there, and that's kudos to him. And kudos to our community. When everybody else in the United States was about Black Lives Matter and anti-police and defund police, that narrative wasn't playing in Hialeah.
That never happened, and it was happening nationwide.
Come on.
Nationwide, and that never took place here. On the contrary, I believe that the people of the constituents of the city were like, no. We have to have law and order. Law and order.
In fact, if If you look at the basis of your economic prosperity in any community, it starts with safe streets.
Oh, 100%.
If you have safe streets, you produce safe commerce. It allows people to go shopping, to go to dining halls, to go out into the community, move economy.
El dinero fluye.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't do that in certain parts if what you fear is, that I'm going to get jacked up or I'm going to get mugged, and that doesn't happen. And then the other part of that is a direct cooperation with our police department. So if our cops are out there working a crime, you're going to have residents that are participating and wanting to solve the crime. And I would venture to say, and I think the statistic would bear me out correctly, a lot of the crime that happens in the city of Hialeah, because we're not immune to crime, obviously, a city of, on the books, 233,000, but in reality, probably more than 315,000 living in our city. Reality would tell us that a lot of the crime that happens is people that come into our city to commit a crime.
Not people that live in the
Not
city.
people that live in our city.
Interesting.
So do you think that, because I know, going back to what both of you guys said, that narrative is pushed of the anti-immigration and the narrative of, wait, how could this city not be doing this, and the BLM and all the riots and all these crazy things? And I think you can connect the dots looking backwards. And you say, well, okay, you present the two scenarios. A county, a city that is heavily Democratic. You want to talk about a state, you want to talk about California. You want to talk about a city, New York City, that all these places were the capital of the world. And you kind of see how they are right now. The crime's through the roof, illegal immigration's through the roof. Yet, when you say what you just said, that, hey, we're in favor of legal immigration. Matter of fact, that's a foundation of this country.
Sure.
They say, oh, well, you're going to say you're going to kick out all the illegals? No, how can you do that? You're anti-immigration. So if it doesn't fit their narrative, then they demonize you. Is that?
Of course. So paint us as hypocrites and paint us as somehow or another turning our backs on an immigrant community. And none of that is valid as far as I'm concerned. When you talk about major cities, New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, great, iconic cities, worldwide cities, okay? All run by Democrats and all in an abyss of hell. Going to Philadelphia, going to Boston, going to New York. I have a son who lives in New York, and New York is not
What it used to
what it
be.
used
No,
to
at
be.
all. No.
At
It
all.
ain't Giuliani's New York, that's for sure, okay? And if you go to San Francisco, short of a Chinese government visit, there are homeless encampment areas. Every underpass between Oakland and San Francisco is a shantytown in the United States of America. These are Democrat-run cities who have embraced policies that are failed. In fact, I would tell you, the job that I have as mayor is very simple, not rocket science, okay? I'm not here to solve social problems in this community. That's not my job. My job is to provide you safety in police and fire, clean the parks, pick up your garbage, and make sure your streets are safe. Quality of life issues. My job is not to solve social issues. My job is not to determine who's going to use a bathroom, and if a boy thinks he's a girl thinks he's a boy. That's not my job as mayor, but a lot of the mayors in these cities walked into those issues and now find themselves literally wondering what the heck happened to New York? What the hell happened
And then
to
they have to
LA?
stick to that narrative, because then if they get outside of it, it's like, oh, well, we kind of dug ourselves into it. But so that's the reason why you think all these other cities are, you said it, going into an abyss of hell, because exactly what you said, that they're letting go of like the priorities, which you just said are safety, school, parks, and focusing on this. Well, we have to have a gender neutral bathroom. We have to have this. Like, that's the reason why you think those cities.
Nonsense. It's nonsense stuff, okay? It's needle sharing or needles for drug addicts. To me, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
And it's not how this country was founded.
Of course it's
This
not.
country was founded on principles that in today's world, because of the radical mind virus of the left, a lot of the country has gone, like you said, into an abyss hell. And it's one of those things where we have to understand that the fight for America is really a fight between good versus evil. So I think for future generations to come, people will look back and be, that 2020 to 2024 is going to be a very, very interesting period where people are going to look back and say, was I on the right side of history or was I on the wrong side of history?
There's been an eye-opening experience of understanding that the media was complicit with the Democrat extreme left talking policies. One would have been able to argue 30 years ago, during the times of Ronald Reagan, the things that separated the Democratic and Republican Party were minute things, not major things. There's a vast, vast gap now between, the far left of the Democratic Party and even the mainstream of the Democratic Party, not to mention the Republican Party. This is problematic. So when you've had, and what we've seen over and over again, what was going on in the school system. I always think God's hand's in play, whether we like to think it or not. So here comes a pandemic. We could probably dedicate an entire podcast on where the heck the pandemic came from.
The origins.
China virus. And we could do that. But here's a reality of it. You know what we found out? What a lot of our kids were learning in school were not aligned with our values. To have a month dedicated in our public school system for Gay Month, and we have only a day for veterans, is just craziness. And I think a lot of parents were saying, wait a second, hold on.
It uncovered a lot of things.
Oh my goodness, did it cover? It did. And in the state of Florida, I applaud, Governor DeSantis say, wait a second, we're going to attack this thing right head on. We're not going to sugarcoat this stuff. It's unacceptable. Transgender storytelling day.
The drag queens?
So
falta de respeto.
I think a lot of parents were saying, wait a second, this is not acceptable. And it became very eye-opening. And I think what you've seen over the last 4 years is a president who sadly was lost. He was age caught up to him. Not that he was ever a good senator, talking about Joe Biden, but you saw policies now that were wreaking havoc. And if local communities did not stand up and react, states were going to get lost. And luckily in Florida, we've now become a model. In fact, the Trump administration is going to have a lot of Florida DNA in his administration from a lot of the nominations that he's making that we're very proud of. And, got to mention, Marco Rubio, what that does, carrying a Cuban-American flag to the State Department, that is like,
major. Come
on, man.
Yeah.
None of us could dream that much. And a lot of weight, a lot of pressure on Marco. I know he could handle it, but he opens the door. Any one of us could then carry on into positions like that where before we like, don't ask for HUD. That's what we would, Hispanics, minorities, give me HUD, give me transportation. We're talking about State Department, Secretary of State. That's a big deal.
The entire world is opening up.
Yeah.
It's our oyster, man.
Yeah.
I
Imagine
always
people
say
in Cuba get pissed off at Cuban government, right? So
I always say, Mayor, that la sangre cubana, okay, for our English listeners, the Cuban blood, right? The only place where Cubans do not succeed is in Cuba.
how sad is that, right?
You grab a Cuban, you take him to Spain. You grab a Cuban, you take him to Mexico. You grab a Cuban and you bring him to the heart of Hialeah, and that person will undeniably become a success.
And it's an indictment on a failed system, beyond dictatorship, a failed system that does not, the future of your country is doomed when success is outside of your borders, right? That's a failed state as far as I'm concerned, you know? So, but we've been the benefactors of it. In fact, I would counter that Miami-Dade County and Hialeah have been the benefactor of chaos in Cuba, Venezuela, and Colombia, and Nicaragua, and Haiti. We've been the benefactors here in Miami-Dade County. It wasn't by economic design or grand plan, okay? We've benefited from chaos in other places.
In what sense?
Cuban dictatorship basically opens a door for a migration of 3 million people. Where do they come? South Florida. Colombians fleeing violence, drug war violence of the 80s. Where did they come? South Florida. Nicaragua goes down into an abyss. Where did they come? Here. Chavez and Maduro do what they've done to Venezuela, which, by the way, countries that ever had histories of mass migration, all of a sudden, where do they come? South Florida. We reap the benefits, brother. A churrasco que you're eating in an Argentine restaurant or a gallo pinto in a Nicaraguan restaurant wasn't around in the 70s. All that is product of people coming to here, bring their culture, bring their
cultural melting pot.
Big time. South Florida demonstrates that cultural melting pot, but at the same time, a separation of flavors because, you know, we could see it. You know the
Yeah.
difference between an Argentinian restaurant and a
course,
Colombian
yeah.
restaurant, right? I know the difference of it. So that experience has helped South Florida, I think, in my opinion, prosper and grow. If not for chaos in those places, maybe we're still a little backwater town, you know, with nice beaches.
That's an interesting
Yeah,
perspective.
I was gonna say. I mean, going back to the visionary. That's an optimistic perspective. And speaking on optimists, I think on a positive note, there's something very special that's coming up next year, which is the Centennial year of Hialeah. Hialeah is turning 100 years old. It's crazy to think about. What are you most proud of the last 100 years that Hialeah has accomplished?
Look, it's a lot to unpack.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to just say the fact that this has been the launching pad for a lot of people's journey into the American dream. That's a fact, okay? But let me answer it a little differently and how we're going to approach this 100th year. There's a story to be told, and it doesn't start in 1960, 61 when a mass migration of Cubans were coming and were filling textile factorías, señoras cosiendo. It doesn't speak to, let's say, 1980, cuando Mariel or Camarioca, and before that, the rafter crisis as people were coming in and inhabiting South Florida and Hialeah. It goes beyond that. It goes into what I call the black and white era of Hialeah, okay? 50s and 60s and 40s and 30s, the founding, a Hialeah racetrack, a Hialeah speedway. It speaks to rednecks. It speaks to cattle industry. It speaks to aviation pioneers that look at Hialeah and literally put a stake in the ground. If you think of Dade County in general, Dade County, if you know where Jackson Hospital is,
Yeah.
at one time, get this for a second, at one time, that was the western fringe of Miami-Dade County.
Wow.
Okay? And Hialeah was way out there, the boondocks, right? And that's a history that I want to tell people, how this city metamorphosized itself over the years, how it transforms itself over the years. And here's the key, and why these things are very important. I need to educate kids on who was Henry Mylander, who was Benny Babcock, why is McDonald named McDonald Park? We need to educate kids in our city so that they understand that. And then they start getting pride in their city. And then they decide, you know what? I don't need to leave the city of Hialeah. I got everything I need here in the city of Hialeah.
I love that.
And to
Yeah.
me, that's the challenge that we're going to have.
Well, I wasn't expecting it because I know we've had conversations where Hialeah, I would make the argument maybe 10, 15, maybe a couple of years ago, was like a city that most people would frown upon for some reason. Like,
Sure.
you make it out of Hialeah and you're not going back. You're not moving back into Hialeah. That's it. You came from there. You didn't even say you came from there. Hey, I came from Miami. That's something that we talk about a lot. Like, people don't accept that they came from Hialeah. So do you think, in essence, educating the younger generation, because ultimately those are the people that are going to be, you know, living here, growing up here, educating them is the way that narrative is going to turn around?
It has to be part of it, right? Let's understand that immigrant experience. When you come to the United States and you move into Brooklyn or Hialeah, which is the Brooklyn of the South, now you moved in and you start getting some economic prosperity. And in your mind, if I stay in Hialeah, am I progressing? Do I need to go to Miami Lakes, Pembroke Pines, go to Davie to show progress? It's a mindset. And I need to break that chain. If you start in Hialeah, you could finish in Hialeah and you could prosper and you could build your wealth and you could build a home and you could build a future for your children and your children's children, all in a community. You don't have to show progress by picking up and leaving. Now, I look at this from a very unique perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably the first mayor of the city of Hialeah that wasn't raised in the city of Hialeah. I'm a Westchester kid, okay? I come to Hialeah, but I instantly found something I did not find in the area that I lived in, although, just for those Village Greeners that may watch this, I thought Village Green and still think Village Green is the center of the earth. The neighborhood I grew up west of the Turnpike, near what used to be American Hospital, now Kendall Regional Hospital. That's where I grew up. That's the area I grew up. I never felt a sense of community like I feel here. I have friends that I grew up with that I stay in touch with, but here in Hialeah, there was a nucleus, a city hall, a sense of community, a parade, a 4th of July celebration, all these things that bounded us as a city. And so I want to let that Juanito that just showed up here and is trying to wage his way through the city of Hialeah and that American dream and navigating the language, that person could be successful and never leave here. Never leave the city of Hialeah. He could build his fortune. She could build his fortune right here. And to me, that's going to be the challenge. And how do we do that? By allowing the development, allowing the amenities that kid, my kids, look for when they want to go to dinner, and the first thing they start thinking, I want to go to Coral Gables, or I want to go to Miami Lakes or Pembroke Pines. That's where they have good restaurants. And I want to change that dynamic and say, no, espérate. I've got good restaurants in Hialeah. Not that I own them, but there are people making these investments and are creating a culinary experience that could be unique to Hialeah and is high quality.
One of which is La Bodeguita.
La Bodeguita.
On 4th Ave.
La Bodeguita, La Romanita, La Taberna Ignacio, Trigos. I mean, La Fresa Francesa. There are places that are finding their niche in Hialeah that have Hialeah DNA all over it.
But the idea is to expand it more, because like you said, not have to leave and be able to create that wealth here.
Can we, for those entrepreneurs out there that are watching, participating, can we create a restaurant district in Hialeah, an entertainment district? Is that the future of Hialeah Park?
I can see it.
I love how you threw that out to the entrepreneurs.
Bring it.
Come and invest. Come and invest. If we could create... Estoy cansado of going to Coral Gables and going to the beach and finding out that the waitress lives in Hialeah, the cook is from Hialeah, a lot of the inhabitants in the restaurant are from Hialeah, and I'm saying, guys, we could do all this in our city, okay? I don't have playa. I get it. I'm not going to try to be something that we're not, but think about it. Hialeah's in the center of all the action, 5 minutes from the beach, from the airport. You're in the heart of downtown. Within 10 minutes, you're in the heart of downtown of Broward County in Fort Lauderdale. In 20 minutes, I mean, we're in the center of all the actions. You're on a highway to Naples in nothing flat. So right now, we've become the center of action between two counties, Broward County and Dade County. We should milk that for all it's worth.
Let me ask you, on that point of investing, I myself, I own an acquisitions company and I run a private equity fund. I do have that investor mindset. And I think you would agree that some of the people that do watch are also investors. What are 3 things that the city of Hialeah is doing right now to be able to generate more capital from investors?
Outstanding question. So let's remember what the city does. I provide you service, okay? If I do high-end quality service, the investors come. And how do the investors know to come? Number 1, the city's bond rating is right now at a minus AA, okay? We are AA rating. We are short of the AAA rating, okay? Which means a financially sound government. Very important for those that want to create and look for stability. Investors look for stability and a return on their investment. What else are we doing? We're investing in what I call the non-sexy underground investment in water and sewer. If you have a viable system to move crap out, okay, it allows more businesses to come. This is the lifeblood. I can't entice you to bring a company to invest in my city if I don't have the capacity to be able to allow you to bring. You can't tell me I've got a 500 employee investment that I want to bring to you, and I'm going to turn around and say Durham won't approve it because Hialeah is not invested in the pump stations and in the infrastructure that it needs. So bond rating, budget soundness, infrastructure investment, extremely, extremely important. 2 critical factors. And then number 3, our permitting process. You know, we need to, and I'm blessed by having good people that work with me, that their entire mentality is to help business owner open their doors as quickly as possible. Whether that's navigating our license department, our building department, our zoning department, or the county's bureaucracy. I've got folks that's what they do on a daily basis. Invaluable their work to the city, because the quicker somebody opens their door, the quicker they're moving economy, the quicker they're employing people.
100%.
Which I'm assuming is the essence of the 2050 plan, which, if you care to elaborate on that.
When we talked about vision at the
Yes.
outset, we talked about what does that blueprint look like, okay? We need to have a drawing board, and we need input from folks. And we've gone out into community, have conversations with them, and hear what they want. They talk about transportation. They talk about mass transportation. Critical. How do we do that? How do we build off of 3 metro rail stations, 2 tri-rail stations in the city of Hialeah? How do we maximize the development off of that opportunity, right? People have talked about that. But there's also people in our community that want walkable communities. So you need to have a mixture of commercial, residential that kind of blends with each other. So I could go caminando to la bodeguita del medio, not so much la bodeguita where I'm going to eat, so I could buy bread and milk. And so I think all that is part of it. And if we layer that into what we are all trying to figure out what the city's going to look like, that's the foundation that I'm talking about. I won't live to see it, man, but I want to make sure that that book is passed on to the next mayor or la alcaldesa or the next leadership of the city. And the one thing I would hope would be gratifying if I've got angel's wings on, 25 years from now, is that somebody to say what they were doing in 2024, 23, 25, 26, however long I'm blessed to be able to serve as mayor, they were thinking about us. Even back then, they were thinking about us. Make good deals that when we move forward have reset buttons that allow future councils and mayors to reevaluate, recalculate. So it makes sense today, it makes sense 30 years from now.
I love that. For that future mayor, right? Looking back at all of the things that the city has been able to accomplish, what is one thing that you feel in the center of your heart that Hialeah would undeniably benefit from, but has yet to be completed, that you're hopeful that the future generation will be able to bring?
Okay, you got to ask me that question in 2029. Can't ask me that in the middle of my term as mayor. I would hope that they would point to the synergy that we created between us and Miami Lakes with the opening of a bridge. Very, very non-earth shattering kind of thing, but it linked an area that needed an escape valve, which was the west end of our city. I would hope that when I leave here in 2029, people will see a couple of things. One, that there was a government that was transparent and worked directly with the residents and was an ally for them to be able to fulfill their American dream. I think that to me is very, very important. I'm all about the American dream. I know that people come here to this country hoping to build something for their children. Think about this for a second. In many cases, our parents or grandparents came to this country and their dreams had ended. And then they started to invest so that our dreams could become fulfilled, okay? And I know that is an experience that continues to happen in the city of Hialeah. So my mission at the end of the day is, how did this government during, if God willing, the 8 years that I served as mayor, how did this government help facilitate those dreams for a lot of people that had a business plan on a napkin, that were going to put in their life savings to open up a store? And what they found was not an obstacle, but allies in the city that helped them create that dream. If at the end of the day, somebody could say, oye, durante los 8 años que vos era el alcalde, esta ciudad se estaba moviendo. That would be gratifying.
Pero es que se está moviendo. Se está moviendo. And not for nothing, not because you're here, but we've had this conversation. I speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people that I speak to all say that you're doing a fantastic job. So what do you think are going to be three of the most important topics that you want to address for this upcoming election for 2025?
The rate of water in the city, expensive. And I think that's something that we need to make sure we address, and we are aggressive. I'd like to leave a floor plan of what a mass transit system may look like here. Now, I'm going to dream big here with you guys, okay?
Let's do it.
But I see a people mover in downtown Miami, and I see what that people mover has done for economic development and opportunity. I'm the second largest city, not me. City of Hialeah is the second largest city in Miami-Dade County, and we don't have a people mover. And I'd like to think big on what would that look like. How could we get to that point? Now, I've already done some work as the chair of the TPO along with the executive director to start implementing on what that looks like. Big challenge. I want to see what that would look like as far as Hialeah is concerned. And then, as I told you, I want to work with the owners of Hialeah Racetrack and start piecing together what an entertainment district looks like. I want Wynwood in Miami, in Hialeah Park. Those are goals that I have. I do want to say something because the people that know me know that I'm very, very humble, and I want people to understand my success is surrounded by quality people that are with me on a daily basis, okay? It starts with Mark Gomez. It starts with Carlos San Jose. It starts with Ismari Monreal, my core team. But it moves to Jenny. It moves to Sally. It moves to Maritza, who are add-ons to the family, who also help me on a daily basis. It speaks to Ruth Ruby, my budget director, who I blindly trust when she's crunching numbers, and her staff of Pedro and Jorge Blanco. It goes to our park director, our building director, our license director, our planning and zoning director. These are all people that have bought into a vision that I've shared with them of let's help people move the dial. Let's not be the obstacle. And I got to tell you, it's because they all take pride in the work that they do that make me look good. So I stand on their shoulders. I get the benefits of when they do great stuff. I'll get the arrows if they don't, but the buck stops with me. But luckily, up to this point, I haven't had folks that have been upset about things that we're trying to do. On the contrary, they appreciate the efforts. And if not for those folks, I would tell you that the success isn't real. If they're working against me, if they're like, oh, este tipo está loco, we're not going to do any of these things, we're going to do what we want to do, then I would tell you the story would be different. But I've been blessed. The work that George Fuentes is doing with our police department, I'm blessed because he's humbly created a DNA of accountability, of professionalism. And then, because of the construct that I have, we could pay our police more. We could pay our fire guys more. We could restore things that were taken away from them so they can have pride in what they're doing. Happy employees deliver great service. Disgruntled people give disgruntled service, okay?
That's powerful.
True, that is true.
That's powerful.
I would like to say what I'm hearing more than anything. There's I don't know if you know who Patrick Bet-David is, but he has this quote. He's an influencer. He has a big company that he always says the future looks bright. And I think that is exactly what I'm taking from you, that the future inevitably of Hialeah looks bright. The name of the city of progress is, like I said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, but I think inevitably it's going to be true, and it is true. Last question. Outside of politics, outside of, your term, God willing, if you serve another term, what do you want to be remembered for? Or qualities that you want to be remembered about?
I'd be happy with just being recognized as a good parent. That's my biggest job, right? I got 5 kids. I gotta uphold a standard for them. It's tough. I don't know if you got kids, but that mantle, God has a sense of humor. He sends you kids. He doesn't send any kind of work plan. There's no manual. And I would tell you that, to me, that's my biggest challenge, my biggest honor, my biggest failures, okay, is trying to fulfill that role as a parent. Obviously as a husband, because my wife and I are a team, I fail her many times when I don't hold my end of the bargain, and she does a great job of fulfilling and carrying us when I can't. But, man, at the end of the day, that's the only thing I really care to be remembered for, Well, he was straight up. He came here, didn't steal money from anybody, didn't treat anybody rudely, worked with everybody. I'll be happy with that, man. I'll be happy with that. And if, let others decide, what they're going to say about me. I'm not going to write that story. If I did write the story, I would have been a shortstop for the New York Yankees, and you know, I would have been a famous baseball player. But I couldn't hit, couldn't run, and couldn't pitch. So clearly, baseball was not in the offering. So
I love that. Like, I don't think we can thank you enough. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this conversation. I think this interview, this topics that we covered, is gonna hopefully outlive us and hopefully live onto the future, to where people 4 years later can look back and say, "Oh, he's not that crazy," because he was talking about it, and then he was.
He made
crazy.
it happen.
He made it happen.
He made
So
it happen.
boy, the best of Hialeah is still to come. All right,
100%.
I love that. I love
believe
that.
that 100%.
100%.
The best is yet to come. I often say, and I think we can close with this. People used to call Hialeah Agua Fango y Factoria.
Oh yeah.
Not anymore. I came up with a new slogan, and I'm sure you can take it from me. Ahora es la mejor ciudad del mundo desarrollando economía.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. All right, make sure we write that down, okay? Make sure we write that down.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you again for your time. Anything that you guys want to leave off on?
So I'll tell you, I love these formats. If you ever want to do it again, and we could talk about other things that are not related
100%.
to the city or politics. I'm a person who loves history, loves sports. My passion right now is my son going to school and trying to fulfill his dreams of being the next Steph Curry. Although I have a rude awakening for him. He's not going to be 6'3", but and I haven't told him that yet. But anyways, there's a lot of.
But if he can shoot, he can shoot.
He can shoot. He can shoot. He can hoist it. He can do that. That's pretty good. But I think part of a success is what are the components that help somebody create the visions, and I think there's a lot of things. Big history, but I believe we're condemned to repeat history if you don't know history, right?
100%.
And so I'm on my. If you get in my car, you won't hear music. You'll hear either podcasts or books, and usually they're centered around some historical event about our communities, about wars, about people clashing with people. You learn a lot. You learn a lot from that kind of stuff, and then try to hope not to. Either that, you're going to hear The Godfather on my.
That's a good balance. I think we were just saying off camera that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I think those that understand what has historically happened, whether it's with finances, whether it's with a city, whether it's with whatever, the more you understand history, the more that you could go about the future.
True.
That's what I think. But like I said, connect the dots looking backward. Thank you again. Seriously.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. You were phenomenal.
In the future.
This was fun, man. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And like always, everything's going to be in the description. The 2050 plan is Instagram. I mean, the city of Hialeah, all the projects, everything that's coming up. Check it out. Link in the description. And I'll see you on the next one.